The last video in the right triangles section is solving multi-step right angle triangles. So for example, if you look at this diagram I've got here, you can see two right angles. So you might need to solve for one before you can solve something in another. So this question says solve for little b. So first off, I have to figure out where little b is, and I found it right here. So if you look in this right triangle, the only thing I know is an angle. To solve for an unknown side, you either have to know two other sides, and you can use Pythagorean theorem, or you have to know an angle and a side, and you can use a trig ratio. So my guess is that I'm going to want to know this side here, so that I have a known side and a known angle, so I can solve for this side here. So I'm going to get this information from the other triangle. In the other triangle, I have a known side and I have a known angle. So I'm not going to use Pythagorean theorem because I don't have two known sides. I'm going to use a trig ratio because I have a known angle and a known side. So the first thing I have to figure out is which trig ratio I should use to solve for this side here. Let's just call it x, because in this triangle it's side C, in this triangle it's little d, so let's just give it an x. So I want to solve for this side here. So in this triangle on the left, this is my hypotenuse, always across from the right angle. The x is my opposite for this triangle on the left, and then this would be my adjacent. So then figuring out which trig ratio I should use, I'm solving for my opposite, I know my adjacent. So O and A means I'm going to use TOA. So let's set up that trig ratio. I'm going to say the tan of any angle is equal to the ratio of the opposite side to the adjacent side. So the tan of 48 degrees is equal to the ratio of opposite, which is x, to the adjacent, which is 86. To solve for x, I'm going to solve algebraically. I'm figuring out what value, when divided by 86, will give me this tan 48 ratio. So I'm going to times both sides by 86, and I end up with x is equal to, so I'm going to type in 86 times the tan of 48. I get 95 point. Now, here's what's important. Because we're not done, this is not a final answer, I'm not allowed to round yet. Ideally, you're going to keep this whole number in your calculator. If you don't want to, you can keep at least 4 decimal places, so 5, 1, 2, 6. But if you look, if I went to here, the next number is a 7. So technically, if I'm writing down 4 decimal places, I should put 5126 or 5127. I'm just going to write down everything that's on my screen. So I'm going to use this whole thing. Your calculator has some tricky ways of remembering this whole number. Number one, this is recalled as the answer. So if I do another question, this will be an answer. Okay, so one way of doing this is that this is going to be stored as an answer in my calculator. The other one is that I can actually store it. Your calculator often has a button that says STO. If you hit the STO button, often it'll say alpha at the top of the screen, and you're trying to choose which letter to store it as. So if you see that alpha is written in blue, depending on what calculator you have, these instructions might not work for you. You can always Google your instructions or just schedule a Zoom time and I'll go through it with you. But I'm going to store this as capital letter A. Now what happens is that I can now clear my calculator. I can turn it off, I can turn it on a week later, and this number is stored as A. Alternatively, it's also stored as a previous answer, which I'll talk about in a second. So if you don't like this idea of storing as A, write the whole number down. If you don't want to write the whole number down, at least 4 decimal places is usually good, or you can just keep it as an answer, and I'll talk about what that means in a second. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to use this answer. So now I know that this side length in both of these triangles is this 95.51267628. That's the length of this side. So now if I look in this other triangle, I'm going to label it. Now my opposite becomes my hypotenuse. This is the angle I know, so this is my opposite, and this is my adjacent. Now I have to figure out which ratio I'm going to use. Well, now I know the hypotenuse side, and I'm trying to find the opposite side. So now I know the opposite and the hypotenuse, or I want to know the opposite, and I know the hypotenuse, so I'm going to use so. So I'm going to set up this trig ratio. So for this triangle, I know that the sine of an angle is equal to the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. So it's the sine of what angle? It's the sine of 51 is going to equal the opposite side, which is my unknown b, over the hypotenuse side, which is this 95.51267628. Now to solve for b, I have to get b by itself, so I'm going to multiply by 95.51267628 on both sides. Now, if you've cleared your calculator or if you've done something else, I hope you stored this number, otherwise type it in again, okay? Because now to solve, you're going to type this in. Now, if you just did this question and that number is still on your calculator, don't clear to start a new calculation. Just hit multiply. And you'll notice is that your calculator will automatically write this word or these letters A and S. It means it's taking the answer from your previous calculation and multiplying it by whatever you want. So now I'm going to put times by the sine of 51, and I get b is equal to. So answer times the sine of 51, and I get 74. Now this is a final answer, so I'm allowed to round. So to the nearest tenth. So 74.2. Did they give me units? Yes, meters. So side B is 74.2 meters. So again, if you don't want to actually have to type this in all the time, if you use it as a previous answer, if you just keep that on your screen and hit times, it'll automatically do answer. Your calculator also has the letters A and S above your equal sign. So if I had to, we're done this question, but let's say it had been the other way around and it had been 95.5126 yada 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 over B. And if I want to solve for b now, remember this is the bait and switch one. I have to multiply by b, right? And then I have to divide by sine 51. So I'd end up with having to do, oh, actually that one's still easy. Never mind, I can still hit divided by. But if I had to make it so that I was doing sine 51 divided by that answer, I can't hit divided and have the answer come up. I would have to hit sine 51 divided by, then I'd hit alpha, the equal sign or answer, and then it would give me the answer. So you can use the answer from any previous calculation in the next calculation by using the answer button. Or if you had used store, so remember back here where I said, hey, you could store this answer as A, you can recall. So if you want to bring that number up again at any point in time, you hit recall, which is your RCL button, and then whatever letter you stored it as. So if I hit store as A, I'm going to hit recall A. And if you hit recall A in your calculator right now, recall A, then that number comes up and I can use it at any point in my calculation. So this video is a lot about how to use your calculator and less about how to use the trig ratios because you already know how to do that. The moral of the story is this: do not round until your final answer. Okay, so if you are ever going to use an answer again in another calculation, make sure you keep at least 4 decimal places or store it in your calculator to be used again. If it's going to just be used in the next calculation, your calculator already stored it as answer. So play with that, attend a seminar, we'll go through this, and I'll make sure that everybody is using their calculators efficiently and effectively, or book a Zoom session and I can help you with your individual calculator.